Welcome to Self-Love Actually, a podcast that will provide guidance and support along your self-love journey. I'm your host, Hailey Curtis, a self-love life coach who helps people better love themselves by creating a life they dream of living. My purpose in creating this podcast is that it allows you to love yourself a little more, each and every episode. So what is self-love actually? I remember staring at myself in the mirror in 2019 asking this exact question. I was disgusted with the way I looked. I talked to myself very poorly and would curse at myself daily. I slept a lot. I wasn't taking care of my body, and I was really inconsistent with moving my body and eating healthy meals that nourished my body. I cried at least once a week about how stuck I felt in my life. I felt so hopeless, defeated, disgusted, broken, and I really hated myself because of my circumstances. So when I looked in the mirror and asked myself, what is self-love actually? I had no idea. So over the past 3 years, it's kind of been my mission to figure out what is self-love. Self-love isn't just one thing, and it's also not tangible. Self-love is really a lot of different things, and they aren't the easiest of things to do for yourself. Self-love really requires you to be intentional about your actions. So when I had that pivotal moment staring at myself in the mirror, I was committed to loving myself from then on out. I started doing little things at once. I started working out every day because I knew that if I could take care of my body physically, it was also going to take care of it mentally. I started eating the right foods, not really a certain diet, but I would eat what nourished my body. After that, I started going therapy, and that really helped me. It helped me regulate my emotions and understand that my thoughts were just my thoughts and that I didn't really need to believe them. I was also in a toxic relationship at the time, so I decided to end that relationship, and I really felt a lot of relief when I ended that relationship because it was almost as if this person was really preventing me from leveling up and becoming a better version of myself. So I continued to take care of my body, eat foods that nourished my body, go to therapy, and I also did a lot of self-discovery. I allowed myself to explore what I liked and didn't like. I got a longboard because I've always wanted to try to ride one. Longboards are the longer versions of skateboards, and I heard that they are easier to learn to ride. Turns out it's not for me. But I gave myself the space to try out something new. I spent a lot of time in nature with my dog Noodle, and we would just explore hikes in the Atlanta area. I learned to be comfortable with silence and being alone. I've lived alone before, but I would distract myself with the stillness of alone time. The TV would be on, or I'd always be doing something like cleaning or playing with Noodle or doing a craft, or I'd go out shopping. I was constantly avoiding just being with myself. So trying new things and exploring nature really enabled me to just be with myself and actually hear the thoughts inside my head and have a conversation with myself. I started to become my own friend. So with this self-discovery, I started to learn more about myself. I learned what I liked and even loved. And I learned what triggered me and what I didn't like. So I really started to get to know myself. Because I knew what I liked and loved, I started treating myself to those things. If I loved going on hikes with my dog, I made sure to do that every single weekend if I could. With this self-discovery, I got really into personal development and I started to really cultivate a lot of self-awareness. Self-awareness around my emotions, the way I responded to others, the way others responded to me, and the way I talked to myself, and a lot more. But transformation really begins with awareness. If you aren't aware of what needs to change or what you would like to change in your life, the transformation will not happen. I did not like the way I talked to myself. So, since I created awareness around my inner dialogue, I was able to cultivate self compassion in those moments of being self critical or judgmental, or even in moments of self doubt. Let me give you an example. So, I would curse myself out over the smallest thing. Let's say I got something wrong at work. I'd say, "You're such a fucking idiot. Why the fuck did you think that was a good idea?" Like, what? I was extremely rude to myself. I would never say these things out loud seriously. So why was I letting it slide for my inner dialogue? So once I cultivated awareness around these thoughts, I started to catch myself saying these horrible things as they were happening. So I was able to stop the pattern. I would literally tap into what I would tell my 7-year-old self. So let's say I mess up at work again, and I'd say, hey, listen, we don't have to talk to ourselves that way anymore. You messed up, and that's okay. It happens. What can you learn from this to prevent it from happening again? So this response is full of compassion. And literally, it left me feeling so much better afterwards than cursing myself out. So I started to cultivate more and more self-compassion around the negative voice inside my head. I learned about boundaries for the first time in therapy, and that really changed my life. I realized that I didn't have to help people if I didn't want to. I know that sounds so simple, but when boundaries are not a thing in your life, you don't have parameters around how far you're going to go for someone. And not only that, but other people don't know how to treat you if you don't have boundaries. So not having boundaries can be very difficult, and I lived most of my life without them. So when they were introduced to me, it radically changed my life. I learned how to say no, and then I actively practiced it. And that was really hard because I definitely have some people-pleasing tendencies. So setting boundaries are just hard in general, and they're definitely something that I'm still practicing. So about 2 years into my self-love journey, I really knew what I wanted. I knew what I liked and didn't like I said before. And this included my job. I was a graphic designer at the time, and I knew about 6 months into this career that it was something I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. It just wasn't fulfilling to me, and I felt stuck. But, as I went through this self-love journey, this just became something that I could not ignore. And I really felt like I owed it to myself to create another career that I really desired. So I stumbled upon life coaching, and I did a lot of research about it, and I realized that this is what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to start my own business, but I never knew what idea to really land with. And when I learned more about life coaching, it just felt so aligned with my purpose, my mission, and what I really want to do for the rest of my life. So in March of 2020, I started my life coaching business, and it has been a crazy journey ever since. At the end of 2020 in December, I was laid off of my full-time job as a graphic designer. And I had the decision to either leap into this new career or go back to the safe graphic design career that I had already invested 5 years of my life into. So I did this scary thing and the thing that really my heart told me to do, and I leaped into the coaching career that I am in now. It has been a lot of fun, but also very, very challenging, very scary. But at the end of the day, it is such rewarding work. And it is something that is so aligned with me to my core that it sets my heart on fire that I get to do this for a living now. I really don't think I would be where I am today had I not decided to commit to loving myself. My purpose as a coach is to really serve the person who is staring at themselves in the mirror asking, what is self-love actually? I hope that this podcast gives you a few answers that you may be searching for. Each episode will feature a different theme that I've experienced along my journey and feel like it's important for you to experience too. Your self-love journey starts the second you commit to loving yourself. And if you're listening to this podcast, that tells me you've already gotten started, simply because you're listening to it right now. If you are looking for more support outside of this podcast, I invite you to book a clarity call with me. In a clarity call, we get very clear on your goals and what you want for your future. It's also a great opportunity to see if we are a good fit to work with one another. Self-love is a never-ending journey, so it's something that I'm actively working on today. I think it's super important to surround yourself with other people who are on a similar path as you and value self-love. I want to acknowledge you for starting your never-ending self-love journey, and welcome to Self-Love Actually. Thank you so much for listening, self-lovers. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know by leaving a review and subscribing to this podcast. And if you really loved it, please share this episode with a friend. This episode wouldn't have been possible without our production partner, Pinto Media. Making this podcast has been so easy with their help. If you're thinking of starting a podcast on your own, check out their page on Instagram at produced_by_Pinto, Pinto. If you're ready to level up your self-love game outside of this podcast, you can book a free clarity call with me to see if we would be a good fit for one another. I help my clients achieve their goals fueled by self-love. You can head to my website, HaileyCurtis.com, or check out the show notes below. If you have any suggestions or feedback for me about future episodes, please email me at hello@HaileyCurtis.com or DM me on Instagram at @IamHaileyCurtis. I really want to make sure that these episodes best serve you. That is it for today, self-lovers. I will meet you again on our next episode.